Thank you so much for having me. And today we're going to be talking about biohacking. So biohacking is something that we're all doing. Whether you participate in gene therapies like I do, I've taken 6 different gene therapies since I started my company, or you participate in lifestyle, or you don't. It's all biohacking. So the outcome of the health of your life is how you're going to interface with it. And it is my belief that how we need to start interfacing with medicine is by using the most advanced medicine in the world and start to extend our healthy lifespans to extraordinary levels. I believe that gene therapy gives us the ability to do this, that this is how we will break the bottleneck of how long humans can live and how healthy we can live. So you may not be able to see it, but BioViva is my company down here. I'm the CEO. I'm very proud of it. It's my 3rd child. Best Choice Medicine is a platform that I work on to help people get access to these technologies before they're in the regulatory system. So that might surprise you. And Regenerative is a company that I'm working on that is trying to cure glaucoma by reestablishing optic neural fibers. And we're really excited about that. So what is the problem that we're dealing with today in China? So why are we all here? Why is there interest? Number 1, our grandparents are growing older. Your grandparents might have died. Your parents are growing older. You are growing older. And an intelligent species does one thing. They learn to survive and they adapt. So if you look at these numbers, this is really quite alarming. There's an enormous amount of people over the age of 60 in China right now, and that will be 28% of the population by 2040. So these numbers were from the Lancet paper in 2020. So why do we need new medicine? Why would I push so hard to bring medicine to you that the world vastly hasn't seen yet? It's because we must be reasonable people. We cannot be the unreasonable man and hold back technology. We must learn how to survive, and we need to learn to survive and change how we die of disease. So it's been a very natural trajectory for science to do this. All throughout history, we have worked on helping people live longer and healthier. And because of that, we have come to new bottlenecks in disease. Today, 74% of the world's population die of non-communicable diseases. And most of these people are dying of aging-associated diseases. A large percent die prematurely of these diseases. We need new medicine in order to solve this problem, and that's a natural trajectory of science. So I want to point out really quickly so that we have our terminology correct of what we are talking about when we're talking about these new medicines. So there is lifespan. Lifespan is the number of years that you will live. There is health span, and health span is the number of years that you will live in good health. Many of the years that we live today in the average life are not lived in good health. They are lived in poor health. 20 to 30 years of your life you'll have chronic conditions. You'll have what I call the disease of aging. So when we look at regenerative medicine, and eventually what will be called restorative medicine, it gives us the ability to live healthy all the way through the natural years of life, and maybe even extend that. And why is that important? When we look at this curve here, so this is the curve of dying. These are the years in which people die. It starts around to significantly fall around the age of 45, and then we get down to this bottleneck around 90, and most of the population is dead. 85. But it's more than that. This tells us the laws of diminishing returns, okay? This graph is more than just how and when people die. These are the years that you went to school. These are the years you built your wealth. And now this is your health failing. So no matter where you die on this curve, you have the law of diminishing returns. You do not have the same capability, youthful strength, cognitive ability that you had when you were younger. And that should bother us. And this is vastly what people die of. And the reason I wanted to show you this slide is because people who say aging isn't a disease, I would argue with them that it actually is. Because if you took away any one of these lines, so let's look at these lines. There's cancer, heart disease, diabetes, dementia, and COPD. These are the big killers. But if you take one of them away, let's say we just cure one of these diseases, the average person only lives about 2 years longer. So the idea of curing cancer to help people live longer and healthier lives really is not true. Because when you are aging, you have multiple comorbidities. The disease of aging, the processes at the cellular level are actually driving a multitude of conditions. So I'm going to explain what gene therapy is. So gene therapy, this is, I want to think Unique Cure. This video has been used widely, and we have used it, and it has helped people understand. But with gene therapy, we use vector deliveries. We take things that used to be viruses. We take their ability out to get you sick, and what we do is we make them deliver healthy genes to your cells. These genes go to the nucleus of your cells, and they can produce proteins. Your cell essentially becomes the drug factory, and these proteins change the outcome of your health. And this is a beautiful technology because instead of having to remember to take pills every day, you take one injection and it might last for 5 to 15 years. And the outcome is a healthier body when we're looking at geroprotectors and genes that treat parts of aging. So here you can see the mRNA is coming out, it will be coded for proteins, and that changes the health outcome of the cell. This is the power of gene therapy. I love to show this slide. So this is thanks to Pfizer, who did studies with a gene called follistatin that I took in 2015. On the left side, this is the same boy, by the way. On the left side, this is a boy with Duchenne Muscular Dystrophy, and he's having a really hard time climbing stairs because it's a muscle wasting disease. On the right side, this is him 3 months after gene therapy. Gene therapy is revolutionizing medicine. It's changing the outcomes of people's health forever. When we look at approvals, people say, there are no real gene therapies available, right? And there actually are. So these are approved gene therapies in the US right now. This has moved the industry quite far. There are 11 approved gene therapies in the somatic cell delivery space. This does not include the cancer space. There's a myriad of gene therapies that are approved for cancer. They're called CAR-T therapies. But there's a bottleneck. We have a problem with gene therapy and its affordability. So let's go back to these same diseases that have gene therapies for them right now. These are the costs of the gene therapies. So if you're unlucky enough to have a child that has spinal muscular atrophy, which I think is the second one here, it's $2 to $5 million for a cure. If your child is born with a rare form of blindness, it's $450,000 per eye. As a matter of fact, one of these gene therapies, lipoprotein lipase deficiency, was actually pulled from the market because they didn't have enough people who could afford the gene therapy itself. So that is a problem for the industry that we want to solve. And one way that we can solve that is by treating the age-related burden. So aging-associated non-communicable diseases, again, are major killers on the planet. They have an incredibly large market. So one of the largest markets for monogenic disease, where gene therapy started, those were monogenic diseases that I had up here in the list, is Duchenne Muscular Dystrophy. In the US, there's 50,000 people who have it, but that still makes a cost-prohibitive drug. Let's look at China. With 254 million people today over the age of 60, we're looking at a scale of affordability. And if you manufacture gene therapy at larger doses, you cut the cost significantly. So you lower the cost. If we had 20 patients who wanted to access gene therapy today, they would each pay 10% less. If we had 1,000, it's almost 50% less. So just by scale, we can make gene therapy affordable. And I want to look at something here. There are things called investigator-led studies. They are clinical trials that are done around the world in zones in which you can move innovative medicine more quickly to patients. So when we looked at what's happening in medical tourism and the cost of medical tourism compared to an approved gene therapy, these are the cost differences that we get. So if you were to treat one eye in the US, it's $425,000, but if you are willing to travel to get your therapy, it would only be $60,000. And I really love medical tourism because it's going to force the industry to be honest. It's going to force the cost down and make affordability for everyone. And if you were to do a systemic gene therapy like we saw with spinal muscular atrophy, which could be $2 to $5 million, the same gene therapy offshore could be around $250,000. So already you can see that the industry is still scaling by force. So one of the ways that my company BioViva wants to work on making gene therapy affordable is by using combinatorial gene therapies and direct organ genetic therapies that don't have to be distributed systemically. So one of the places that we started was getting some proprietary IP by working with patients with dementia. And we started with a dual gene therapy. And this is a paper that was published about that. And we treated 5 patients with 2 genes to help them with their cognitive decline. And this was actually the first gene therapy in the world that was actually given to patients with dementia. People were waiting too long, innovation was working too slow, so we moved forward. And what we saw was increase in cognitive ability, and we saw increase in telomere length, which was something we didn't expect to see because it was a small amount of gene therapy that was delivered intranasally to the brain. Now, when we're talking about biohacking, the biggest interest in this gene therapy is for cognitive enhancement. So the company that actually moves this forward to give it to patients has mostly people who are looking for cognitive enhancement to perform better. And I took this gene therapy, and I can say that it definitely helped me. So the 2 genes that we use in this gene therapy, one of them is called telomerase reverse transcriptase, and it lengthens the caps at the ends of your chromosomes called telomeres. This is where I came into the scene and into the media after taking this gene therapy and had a big result in lengthening the telomeres in my T lymphocytes. And the other one is KLOTHO, and it's associated with better outcomes for dementia and cognitive decline. But then we moved on from there, and we wanted to start solving bigger problems. So really what's wrong with gene therapy is the ability to deliver larger payloads. So when we look at things like the gene therapies that I did, we had to have them all made in different viral vectors, okay? And this is very expensive. So each one of these might have cost $250,000 to manufacture. So then you're adding that all together, and you're getting an extraordinary cost if you want to treat something like aging, because aging isn't going to be treated with one gene. So we started working with a new vector called CMV, cytomegalovirus, and this can hold more material. And that will get manufacturing costs down and make gene therapy more affordable for everyone. So we're really excited about this. And if you want to read about it, we have a paper in PNAS that speaks on it. We worked on both IP in intranasal and injectable gene therapy. So aging is complex. I would love to say that we have already cured aging. But we haven't, because it's going to take a real strong approach. And our goal as a company is to find that approach through genetics, to find the genetic levers that help you absolutely and succinctly be younger. So when we look at the hallmarks of aging, we look at some things that we can do. So if you look at stem cell exhaustion, stem cell treatments might be a wonderful option for people. Repairing the stem cell niches and getting your stem cells signaling again is what some of these therapies do. It's not just about having other cells in your body. When we look at mitochondrial dysfunction, we look to a gene called PGC1 alpha. Luckily, it's a very small gene, so it's easy to get into a genetic therapy, and it basically makes the powerhouses of your cell more robust, and that makes you stronger. And it also probably has benefits for obesity. When we look at cellular senescence, there are several gene therapies in the senolytic space. So you can do a gene therapy that will help eradicate the senescent cells in your body, which are essentially zombie cells that no longer divide, and they send off inflammatory markers. Epigenetic alterations. So I think a lot of people who have been following the space have been watching partial reprogramming. This is also a genetic therapy. Telomere attrition, hTERT, human telomerase reverse transcriptase. We can lengthen your telomeres. And that is good news because that's definitely a bottleneck to aging, associated diseases. And then one of the final things I put on here, although we have a slew of genes that we work with that are geroprotectors, is SIRT6. And I think that this gene is going to play a very important role in genomic stability. And as we had watched in many talks during this conference, genomic stability is a real, if we can actually help the genome not drift as we age, we can extend lifespan to potentially extraordinary levels. These are our 3 published papers for BioViva. This is our team. We're very happy and proud about this team. They've stuck with us for a long time, and they make things awesome. But what I wanted to spend some time talking about today is we actually have a partnership in China. So if you're willing and interested in working with us, but you don't want to work with a company in the US, we have presence right here. And their name is Future Health Technologies. And what's fantastic about these guys, now they have all of our team, and then this is their team on top of it. But what's fantastic about them is they're helping us move very quickly into non-human primate studies. And that will give us some very detailed information in the CMV that we didn't previously have. And we're also combining genes with this. So this will be a real landmark paper that will come out of this, and hopefully a study that will give us the confidence to start moving CMV to humans as fast as possible. Now, I want to end the presentation on a few slides because I think that this is really important. In 2015, I became a patient of gene therapy. I did it in response to my son being diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. I had worked for a few years in the regenerative medicine space and learned about all this fantastic technology. But when my son was diagnosed, I learned that it didn't translate to humans. That because of strict regulations, we're not able to get human application, and humans are dying. This is probably the first time in history that the regulatory system is not protecting people, but it's actually harming people. People need access to these new drugs. The technology that I told you about today has been around for decades, not just a couple years. It's actually not new technology. And so I became a patient in response to my son's disease in 2015, and I didn't know how much that would shake things up, but it showed how much it was needed. People were talking about it because people need access to drugs. So today, the drugs that you're prescribed are at least 15 years old. And in the movement of medicine, that's extraordinarily old. Innovation is working so much faster than that. As a matter of fact, all the genes that I showed you, we have that open to the world because they're all genes that have so much research done on them that they have been highly exposed to the world. They have been readily available in the data for people to read for a long time. I am not a proponent of animal studies. I think that non-human primate studies, like we're going to do here in China, are the most important because they're very close to humans. We, as companies, as biotech companies, are made to essentially do tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars worth of animal studies that don't predict outcomes in humans. And that's why when drugs get to the regulatory phase, there's a 94% failure in phase 3. It's because what works in a mouse doesn't necessarily work in a human. New and more precise treatments rarely get time in the regulatory system due to the high level of qualification that they need to get there. So what we need to do is we need to de-risk the healthcare systems. So what we don't want to go in is spend our time trying to change the US FDA or the Chinese FDA. What I work on is new regulatory zones in the world in which we can offer ethical, legal, and supportive therapies to patients now, giving patients the dignity to try new drugs. When you look at the media, do not let them confuse you. These patients are not being taken advantage of. They're the most educated patients in the world. They're actually being given an option to live. And they are not being given those options in their home countries. We need to turn it into a healthcare system instead of a sick care system. And of course, people need to be treated younger and younger so that we actually work into real preventative medicine, which I believe gene therapy will deliver on. We will make your cells more youthful and healthy before you get old. So the stakeholders in a system like Best Choice Medicine, of course, number one is the patient. Everything depends on the patient and a good patient outcome. Medical doctors, giving them the ability to use tools that have been taken away from them. So in the US, for instance, if a doctor tries to use a drug that isn't on the list of things that he can legally prescribe, he can lose his license, even if he knows his patient's going to die taking those drugs. Investors can actually learn how well drugs work before they invest because they have human data over animal data. Governments will save trillions of dollars. It's estimated that the US, I'm from the US, so it's a little US-centric, the US alone could save $38 trillion a year by slowing aging by only 1 year, which we can do way better than that. And can you imagine how much the Chinese government can spend? You have exponentially more people over the age of 60 than we do. Biotech companies, pharmaceutical companies, and universities will also benefit because it gives them a route to use advanced medicine. I'll go over this quickly. We identify candidate treatments. This is not where we start. First thing we start with is a decree in a country. We pass a law at the presidential level to make this happen. Then we have identified drug candidates. Stakeholders submit their information. That includes the drug companies, the patients, and then the review board goes over them. If they think that this therapy is safe enough, it goes into a database, patients get access, and then the outcomes are reviewed and restated. And what we hope is this will launch drugs into the regulatory system, but we also hope that they will stay with us so that all of us can get access to them for a fraction of the cost of what they will cost when they get through a regulatory system. So we work with governments. We actually work with the Ministry of Health in any country that will have us, and we build teams in those countries that reflect the country's values, and we work hard to give moral access and dignity to patients so that they can get access. And if you're interested in any of the 3 countries or 3 companies, you can actually go ahead and scan this. One of the things that I would love you to scan, although I know it's behind the podium for a lot of people, is Best Choice Medicine. On this website, we have a petition that you can sign. And when we get enough people signing that petition in each country around the world, it allows us to start negotiating with the government. So if we have enough names in China, we'll actually be able to go to the government level and start speaking with them on this. So we definitely owe it to the world to not leave our children with the diseases that we die of today. That is progress, and that's something that we should work on. And of course, I want to leave you with the idea and the knowledge that we are all biohackers. If somebody, my presentation should have probably been about my own biohacking experience, but knowing the forum, but you're welcome to come up and ask me about it. I've taken 6 different gene therapies. I will continue to do so. I think it's the most advanced medicine in the world. I'll be 53 in January, and I feel great. Thank you. And And I also want you to remember that no matter what you do, whether you participate in advanced medicine, whether you exercise or you don't, you are all biohacking. So let's make sure that we're doing it for the best and the best human outcome. And let's remember that if we reject change, we know what happens. The only institute, the only human institute which rejects progress is the cemetery. So let's not end up there. Thank you so much. Really quick, I just want to say really quick, point out a couple of people. So Kevin Yang is a man who is very progressive in helping you all live longer and healthier, and he invested early in BioViva because he understands the power of the technology. And so we're very, very grateful to you, absolutely. And Dr. He Zhang is over here, and he leads Future Health in China. So,
thank you very much, Elizabeth. So, anyone has any questions? 我们有任何问题要问 Elizabeth 吗？好的，这位嘉宾啊。
Thank you. Thanks for your speech. And I have two questions. And first of all, I want to know: do you think the gene, the medicine, such as use the gene, do they have any risks of this therapy?
You know, we have seen some negative outcomes in gene therapy when too high of doses are actually delivered to humans. So our company has been really stringent on knowing the values that you can actually administer to a patient and the values that you can't. And actually your question is really good because it points out something that happened in the regulatory system recently in the US. So the toxicity levels of gene therapy are well known and established in the literature, but that isn't always something that regulatory bodies look at. And it actually did recently lead to the death of a few children because they were given too high of a dose of gene therapy that was well known. So I think that when you look at the industry/biohacker community, those of us who actually want to take our own drugs, you can have more confidence that we're moving forward safely than other industry people might be. And so I think that that's a really good question and a really important thing to point out, that you cannot guarantee that a regulatory body is going to have the same oversight as a smaller group of people. And what was the second question?
Yeah, so the second question is then, what do you think about the best or the most useful way about the gene therapy to help people define the aging?
Well, you know, some of the genes that I showed you, I think, is the place to start. So two of the gene therapies that I took in 2015 were telomerase reverse transcriptase, which is a gene that lengthens the caps at the ends of your chromosomes, keeping them from becoming cellular senescent and not being able to divide. It also helps your immune senescence. So when we looked at COVID patients, the people who were most likely to die had immune senescence. They had short telomeres in their immune system. So that single gene therapy probably hits the most hallmarks of aging. But there are also things like cellular reprogramming, which I would argue would probably be better with a small molecule. There are a list of geroprotectors. In 2015, I did follistatin that increased my muscle mass, and I used the wrong shirt to show you. And just increasing muscle mass helps fight metabolic disorder, which type 2 diabetes is very present in the population all around the world now. And it also would help people be protected against frailty. And we have all had aging family members who have fallen down. And this is something that we would want to protect against. But you know, so I showed you some genes up there, but I didn't show you all of the geroprotectors. There's a numerous amount of geroprotectors. So as a company, that's why it became important for us to go after platforms, just delivering better gene therapy than looking at single genes, because there's so many really good candidates. You know, I'm hoping that you in the next 15 years will have several of these genes in your body protecting you from aging.
Thank you. Thank you, Elizabeth. 接下来